Well, hello. I'm Jim Woolley, and you're listening to The Ramblings of a Man Loved by God. Have you ever heard something that it was unbelievable? You just weren't sure whether you could really buy into it or not. Boy, do I have a story for you today. See, when I was a kid, just about every summer, my family would go to the Buffalo River in the beautiful Ozark Mountains. We'd go to a little place that was called Gilbert, Arkansas. I think the population may have been a dozen people. I don't know, to a store that was there. It was a dead-end place. But we'd rent some canoes, and they'd take us on upstream. We'd float back down to Gilbert, and we would just go out and just have a blast. Now, that doesn't seem unbelievable, but what I saw while I was on that river, it did seem kind of unbelievable. See, you ready for this? I saw rocks that were floating on top of the water. And I saw it with my own eyes. Not just one year, not just in one moment. Year after year after year, I saw rocks on the Buffalo River that were floating on top of the water. Now, see, the reason that sounds unbelievable is because you and I both know the nature of a rock is to sink, go to the bottom of the river. But I'm telling you, I saw them floating on top of the river, not just popping up and going back down. I saw some of them float for hundreds of yards at a time in swift water, in still water. I saw some of them float maybe a quarter of a mile, a half a mile down on top of the water the whole time. Now, question, do you believe me? Something inside of you says, well, I shouldn't because I know the nature of a rock. But now let me tell you why you should believe me. Because every year when we would go and we would begin to push our canoe out into the water, I would reach into the river to the bottom, which wasn't very deep there, it was shallow, but I'd have to go to the bottom of the river and I'd grab a rock and I'd pull it out of the water and I'd put it in my canoe. And then I'd get another and then I'd get another and I'd had several. See, my plan was to, while we're going down the river, when nobody's really looking, to take one and just launch it over by another canoe and splash somebody. I love doing that. But the point of the story is this. When I took the rock, whose nature is to sink, and I pulled it out of the water, I put it into something bigger, and the nature of the canoe was to float. Isn't that interesting? So the rock, whose nature was to sink, was actually in the canoe, floating on top of the river, sometimes for a pretty good distance. The reason I wanted to tell you that story is because sometimes the gospel, it just seems too good to be true. But the message of the gospel is this, that you and I, our lives have been hid together in Christ. That He's in us and we're in Him. We have been placed within one whose nature is different from ours. If you hang around me for very long, you're going to understand. I'm far from perfect. My nature, it's to sink in a lot of ways. But see, I'm in Christ. His nature is to float. So now where death used to rule, life now rules. Where sin used to dominate, righteousness now dominates. Things change because of where my life is. And He changes me from the inside out. So I just wanted to encourage you with that story, with these words today. See, if I were to live by my resume, it would be very unimpressive. But the good news of the gospel is that He took my resume, my college degrees, He took all the good things I've ever done, He's taken all the bad things I've ever done, everything in my resume, He nailed it to the tree. But in place, He's given me His resume to live by. And He's greater than I am. He can do more than I can do. And I get to enjoy the freedom and the liberty of His presence in my life. Do rocks float? Yeah. because they're in something bigger. Hey, I just want to encourage you with that. God bless you. I hope you have a great and blessed day. Go live in Jesus and let Jesus live through you, and just watch how your whole life unfolds before you and begins to change. Again, my name is Jim Woolley, and what you're listening to is just simply my ramblings. It's the ramblings of a man loved by God. And let me tell you, it's a good way to live. Have a blessed day.